I don't remember the answer.
That's
Orlando who?
That's gonna be your question. Nice. Okay, so starting off with what you just said, for those of us, some of us are content creators, reporters. How can we make sure we're still showing love to you guys without negatively affecting what it is you're trying to do with this strike?
Oh, well, it's tricky. I mean, showing appreciation for writers, performers, is actually supportive for us. And also showing that you agree with the idea that people should be rewarded for doing, good work. It was just years ago I was involved with a video game union strike. And the real big reason that these video game companies did not want to even introduce the concept of rewarding the performers who helped them make $650 million in a weekend was, well, if we have to pay the actors, shouldn't we be paying the, technological people who work 22 hours a day? And we sure as hell don't want to pay all those guys. All the money stays in our pockets. So it's just greed, So yes, if you want to celebrate creativity and, the way that great work affects us as, viewers or whatever, that's fine. And if we want to call out these people for greed, that helps too.
I adore your Bob Iger impression.
Is that Swift?
So how did you and Gary Anthony end up collaborating on social media?
Well, Gary Anthony Williams, Georgia origin story, is one of the greatest, most talented improvisers on this planet. And Gary and I are part of a group called The Black Version. And we have a monthly improv show where it's all African-American cast, and we take a suggestion from the audience of a classic or iconic Hollywood movie, and then we improv the black version of it. Like when they yelled out Jaws, we did Catfish. When they did My Fair Lady, we did Chi. And we started out doing it at the Groundlings Theater in LA, where I started my career. And now we've got even more and more attention, to the point that earlier this year we did a show in New York. And last year we played at the Kennedy Center in DC.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So hopefully, with Gary's connections, we'll be able to bring the black version to Atlanta.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Because you can't just play in Chocolate City and not play at ATL.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Oh, sure. So I'm with Second Union. We're a pop culture fandom site. And can you tell us any of your favorite fandoms, from movie, TV show, cartoons, or favorite celebrity encounter? We like classic, retro. I think you and I are about the same age, so we're just discussing Toys R Us kids, Saturday morning cartoons, stuff like that. So.
Well, it's interesting because, I'm a big fanboy, because I grew up back in the day, nowadays they use the term blurred, for black nerds. Back in the day, that wasn't a thing. You could be black or a nerd. Phil, why are you in the corner reading all that white stuff? But now, we can all enjoy anything. And I'm a big fanboy. Although, weirdly, most of my fandoms have been people I did parodies of. Not people I met. I played Sidney Poitier, Sammy Davis Jr. And I would have dreamed to meet any of those guys. Although, I have actually been fortunate in my career to touch base with people who were absolutely foundational in building my, life as a person enjoying. I got to work with Carol Burnett. I got to work with John Travolta. Wow. And those were huge. But I'm also a big comic book fan, which is pretty much at least half the reason I do Comic-Cons. I mean, one half is to get to meet fans. and the other half is to be a fan. And I bring my sketchbook, and I go to Artist Alley, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, I'm at Neil Adams, I'm at John Byrne, you know, people who created the comic books that have been in my head since I was 10.
Hey, so I've read before some information or advice you've given to people who wanted to get into voice acting, and I believe I read that your core advice was, well, you need to learn how to act first. What would your secondary advice be for someone who wanted to break into the field?
That's actually an interesting question, yes. Because you're right, yeah. The first thing I say to anybody is always that voice acting is a misnomer, because the acting comes before the voice. It's not just about having a funny sound. It's about making a character real. But there is a sort of a trick to it, because just being able to act doesn't necessarily make you a great voice actor. I remember back in the day when we were doing Justice League in the early 2000s, they would bring in amazing on-camera actors, and not all of them could do it. Because the thing is, most people, when you are reading words off a page, you lose all feeling. It's just eyes to mouth. But you need to be able to be conscious of how to express things vocally. And that's why a lot of people with a singing background, like Grey DeLisle, become amazing voice actors, because they have an understanding of what the sounds that come out of them do to people's ears. You know, how do I get the feeling of this, you know, arrogant character to these people? Well, maybe I give him this sound. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have warned y'all, I don't do no short answers, so.
Hey, perfectly fine with us. We all
Welcome back.
fine with me. We
I
all
can't post this.
we're all friends. It's cool.
Yeah,
I'll give you a
we are
quick
cool.
follow-up if y'all don't mind.
Yeah.
Since you do have so much experience with both voice acting and on camera, is something that feels easier for you at this point in your life?
Actually, let me turn this off. It's, hold on, make this thing not do that. No, it's actually not about the medium of performance as much as about the quality of the material and the genius of your collaborators. Because especially, I mean, in voiceover, as a voice actor, you are at most a third of that character. Because without the writing and the character design, it's not full, it's not real. You know, on camera, you bring more. You bring the voice, the feel, the expression, and the look of the character. But you need the direction and the writing to help you really bring it to. So when you get to work with somebody like Genndy Tartakovsky, the creator of Samurai Jack, that is as amazing as getting to work with Quentin Tarantino, you know? So it's not about one of those is easier than the other. Like, both of those people will make you a great actor.
What about not as easy or hard, but joyful? Do you find either more joyful?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've all heard Hollywood stories, and there is definitely not a direct correlation between, I had a great shoot and it became Titanic. You know, how much you enjoy something doesn't necessarily make it. I mean, I've done some really great, I mean, I did a movie with Catherine O'Hara and Bill Murray, which was a fantastic experience to be able to share a set with those geniuses. That movie never came out.
Oh, dang.
So, yeah, I mean, enjoyment, it does not necessarily correlate with success, but it does correlate with, you know, the best memories, you know. To me, the actor's nightmare is you do a 6-month shoot in Taiwan where you have dysentery for most of the time. Your wife has a baby, you get to miss it, you know, and then you broke your finger on the last day. So it's just a nightmare. And then that movie becomes the biggest movie of all time, and you spend the rest of your life having people remind you of the worst 6 months of your life. Hey, you're that guy from the...
So you've been in this business, you're a veteran of the business for a while.
Mhm.
How have you seen it evolve over time, especially after more recent events like the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement? And where do you think the business still needs work when it comes to equality and diversity?
That's a very interesting question, because actually, earlier this year, I did a talk to a organization that my daughter began at her high school, an organization called Bridge: Belonging, Representation, Identity, Diversity, Grounded in Equity. And they asked me to do a talk about identity in entertainment. And so I told these, teenage kids, it's like, well, you guys, know what the problems are in terms of diversity and equity and representation, but let me tell you how things have shifted. And I started out telling them about the first black movie star was Lincoln Perry doing Step and Fetch It. The only way back then a black dude could get respect in Hollywood was to be a living stereotype. It's like, okay, yeah, that guy's all right. Yeah, give him another job. He can buy a fancy car now. It's like, yeah, but because he does that, none of these other brothers can. But, and I talked to them how, we moved from that, even though, Hattie McDaniel was the first black woman to win an Oscar, but, and we respect her. She was really, really talented. But if you think about it, they gave her an Oscar for playing a stereotype.
She wasn't allowed to be there either.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, yeah, black mammy. But to me, the turning point was Sidney Poitier. Because he was the first black movie star in mainstream entertainment. And he did not play any stereotypes. He played a completely different image of African Americans: nobility, intelligence, authority, and like, wow, I'd only seen white people play those kind of characters before. But Sidney opened up this world, opened it up not just to, black people watching him on screen, but he opened it up to everybody. It's like, oh, yeah, because white people came to his movies too. Everybody did. Everybody recognized it as quality, not just color. And, we've been slowly moving forward. It's funny, I remember back in the 80s, a bunch of young black actors in Hollywood, we would all sit around talking about, it's like, yeah, I gotta go for another gangster part. Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, so, well, you always gotta play a thug. That's the only way you get a job, It's like, yeah, but I try to ground it in reality, make it a real person, not just, but then, in the early 2000s, I worked on this web series. One of the Zucker brothers from the Airplane movies did a parody of a soap opera set in a fundamentalist Islamic community. He called it Sands of Passion. And the majority of the actors on that show were of Middle Eastern descent. And I heard them having the same conversation we'd had in the 80s, but about playing terrorists. But now, 20 years later, you have Ms. Marvel, you have Rami. So we have moved forward. Like, there are Middle Eastern actors aren't just playing thugs, terrorists. They're playing heroes, and telling all kinds of stories from their experience, just like the way Sidney Poitier did for us.
Where do you think we still need to work on, though?
Well, the biggest issue of diversity and representation isn't on screen, it's in the decision-making rooms. You need the people who do the casting, who green light the projects, to understand the value of representation and diversity, and to want to share space and equity and storytelling, and not just do, well, this is just what I know. It's like, no, spread that out, share it. So when you have, and I'm not saying just, skin diversity, it's thought diversity,
I like that one.
So being a brother from LA, how was it going to Yale?
It was very interesting to, grow up in LA and then go to someplace. Like, I remember, it's like, everything here is so much older. In LA, it's like, oh, wow, this market's almost 30 years old. You go to Connecticut, and there's a friend who lives in a house from 1783. Like, your house is 300 years old? But being able to go to this place with this great long history was really interesting, and it showed me a lot of different things. Because, for those of us on the West Coast, we thought of Ivy League as a level of excellence, but then I got out here and I realized that for many, many years on the East Coast, the Ivy Leagues were just considered money, social. Like Phi Beta Kappa wasn't based on your grades, it was based on your social level. Was your family in the country club? That's how you got to be Phi Beta Kappa back in the old days. So I didn't realize, that, it wasn't about intelligence necessarily. It was about status. But now that's gotten better, and most of these Ivy League schools understand that don't let it just be about legacy, let it be about excellence.
Did you find it easy or okay to find your community there?
Yes, I was very, very fortunate. Part of it was I'd gone to a prep school, so they, teach you how things work in college and how to do research papers and all that stuff. So it's like, oh, I could do the work, so it didn't feel scary and, lack of confidence. But also, I got to find, because a lot of people, as an actor who went to Yale, people think I went to Yale Drama School. It's like, no, I was just an English major undergrad. I ain't Henry Winkler or Angela Bassett. But for undergraduate, Yale back in the days had a lot of extracurricular theater. You could do 3-4 plays a semester. And for me, that was a wonder because I got to meet my community of theater friends. And I actually credit it with my career because my theater friends in sophomore year, we decided to get together and start an improv comedy group. I'd never done improv before, but I loved it. At 19, being introduced to the idea of yes and, collaborate, make your stage partner look good. Because we'd been taught in high school, it's like, theater is about conflict. It was just work hard and, but to give this positive performance concept was great. And so after college, came back home to LA, and I took classes at the Groundlings so that I could have some more improv in my life. And that was just such a good choice because that led me into this wonderful legacy of people like Paul Rubens, Lorraine Newman, Cassandra Peterson, who does Elvira, like so many talented people. And I got to meet them eventually. Plus the people that I was in the Groundlings with were really talented people like Jennifer Coolidge, Will Ferrell, So yeah, improv gave me the community that has benefited my life the most.
What has your experience been navigating the concert within the rules of the strike? Because I know that there's things that you have to avoid talking about. Has that been difficult for you? How have you adapted?
Well, the union's main suggestion is they, understand that we want to show appreciation for our audiences, and they said, okay, it's fine for you to promote yourself, just don't promote these companies that we're striking against. So, and the concept of promotion is a pretty blurry concept, Is a YouTube video promotion? A commercial is, but if it goes viral, it is, So it's, but we all are part of the union, and the union has been really great about, giving us structures. It's like, no, you can promote yourself and your past, and still, you know, show your affection for your fans. So we're still able to go to conventions.
Have you enjoyed this seemingly more unique experience of not being asked consistently about specific projects and probably being asked a little more about yourself in your own history?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's not that different of an experience at conventions, because most of the time, it's rooted in nostalgia. And people want to know about the past and the people we worked with, and, you know, nobody's ever, you know, asking questions, you know, like a Hollywood reporter. It's like, what is the next thing, and what's the date, and what the, you know. No, fans are asking about the things that touch their heart, you know, about like working with Billy West.
Is there some Phil Lamarr improv footage out there somewhere?
You asking me?
That's right, you said you wouldn't remember.
Yeah, well, and also I don't, you know, not on the Google. Well, I don't think there's much, because most of the improvisation work has been done on live theater,
Right.
you know. And actually, it doesn't really benefit to tape. I mean, watching a tape of an improv
Yeah.
is kind of like watching an old rerun of, you know, a sports match. It's like you already know that how it ended, so why watch it now? It's like, you know, ESPN, it's like, here's the '78 World Series. Like, oh yeah, you hit that ball. You don't care, you know, because the real benefit for audiences about improv is the big question mark. It's like, I just shouted out this suggestion. I don't know what he's gonna say, and he doesn't know what he's gonna say. So you need the immediacy. But, you know, nowadays everybody got a phone, so they're probably something.
How much improv do you do on sets when you're working?
Ooh, well, okay, that's a slightly different thing. You know, ad-libbing is different from improv. Because, I mean, when you're working with, you know, great writers, you don't need to make stuff up. You just need to give your interpretation of what they've already written. It's funny, because like, you know, when we did Mad TV, because it looked like comedy and staged, you know, characters the same way we do an improv, people think, do y'all make up this? Like, no. You can't make up stuff on a TV, because we just rehearsed it and the cameraman knows, okay, when he says that line, I pan over here. If you start improving stuff on camera, they don't get it on camera. So, but every once in a while, especially when you're playing a character, you might come up with something, you know, I'm sure, you know, when Michael McDonald was doing Stewart, you know, he had created that character and lived in that character. So I'm sure every once in a while he would like do a little twist or say something else a little differently. And if it works, you keep it. It's like, thanks. And the writers don't get mad at you. It's like, he didn't say the thing I typed. I spent 3 days writing that. Because the writer knows he's going to get credit for whatever you improv.
Oh, okay. That's crazy.
So, there's this long time stigma against animation, ever since its creation, that it's considered a kid thing. But of course, like, we're all adults in the room. So why do you think that animation as a medium is important for adults and important for escapism, especially sometimes when it seems like our real world is literally on fire?
Well, it's interesting because what you're talking about, the lower status of animation, I think has changed over the years.
I agree with that.
Because now, in the old days, you know, when an adult had kids watching cartoons on Saturday morning, they wouldn't stay in their room. It's like, yeah, whatever. And then when the cartoons were over, there'd be golf on Channel 2, and you're like, and then the kid's like, oh, this is so boring. But then the adults would come in, then Dad would come in. But now, we as adults, you know, understand that we can enjoy a cartoon too. And I feel like I have watched that change, you know, over the years that I've been in it. My very first professional job was actually on a cartoon back in the 80s, you know, on the Mr. T cartoon,
Oh, wow.
which wasn't necessarily the best high-quality show. But I could tell that the, you know, adult men working on that did not respect their work. You could tell these guys at a cocktail party would not tell people what they did, you know? And, you know, over the years now, I've met friends in the comic book industry, and it was the same thing. Back in the old days, you just did it for the check, not for any respect. But now, in the world that we live in now, we understand that comic books and animation are art. And I credit one of my one-time bosses, Bruce Timm, who I worked with on the Justice League and Justice League animated series, for letting people in this country, in this world, understand that animation is art with Batman the Animated Series. I mean, to me, that was the first time that people recognized a cartoon. I mean, even though we all loved Bugs Bunny as little kids, but we thought that was just for us as little kids. But when you watch Batman the Animated Series, even back in the 90s, you're like, oh my God, they could show this in a museum. You know, with the Art Deco design and the black backgrounds and stuff. It's like you knew this was not just for kids. This was not just to sell toys. You know, which, you know, back in my 80s cartoon, like, you could tell they didn't care about the cartoon. They cared about, is this gonna sell a Mr. T, you know, figurine? That's what we care. But nowadays, you know, it's not just for kids, because we understand that quality matters. Same way with movies, you know?
Yeah, we have one more question. She's a latecomer, and then we're gonna get you going.
Oh, wow, it's past 12:30 already.
I'm so sorry, but my question is, are there any voices that you wish you could have done differently, even though you would say that the ones that you have done have turned out successful?
I don't think so, because, you weren't here when we were talking this, but voice acting is a collaboration. You and the writer, the director, the creator come together with your concepts of the character. They give, you know, as an actor, they give you the description, they show you the drawing, and then you think, okay, all right guys, here's what I think somebody who looks like that and, you know, is this kind of person, I think he would sound like this. But if that doesn't mesh with the creator's concept, you don't get the job. So the ones that I think I should have done differently are jobs I didn't get. And I just let those go. Like, you know, as a professional actor, you can't focus on, because there are way more jobs you don't get than the jobs you do get. So, you know, that would be like only remembering your ex-girlfriends.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I know they say you gotta go, so I don't want to make you feel older, but you know, I'm 28. When Justice League came out, I was 6. So
Right?
thank you for everything.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Can you give us a
Thank you for watching good stuff. You know, because even back then, not
Right,
every
Mr.
not
T
every
was good.
cartoon is as good as that show. And I don't know if any of y'all have kids, but do you realize that there's stuff you loved as a little kid, but then you try to show it to your friends, your kids, and you realize, oh, I think I just liked that because I always ate Captain Crunch when I watched it. You know? But then there were certain things that you enjoyed as a kid because they were so great. And then you show them to your kids and they're like, oh, yeah, I want to watch all these. You know, so there's a handful of those kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, like Justice League, Samurai Jack, Static Shock, which to me changed Saturday morning cartoons.
Was there any characters that you wish you would have got that you were like, I really, really wanted to do that?
I don't know. No, because like I said, it's all about the experience. So you don't really regret, like, you know, I love Batman, you know, as a comic book fan. But when I watch Batman the Animated Series and hear Kevin Conroy, I don't think, oh, damn it, I wish I could have done that. You know, I mean, that's like watching Sylvester Stallone in Rocky and thinking, damn it, I should have worked out more. And, you know, covered myself in toothpaste.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
We really do have to get it going.
Yeah, we have to.
Appreciate it.
All right.